Zone. Thank you very much for joining us. It is June 19th, 2022, and you are about to enter the Stone Zone. With the news that Julian Assange will be extradited to the United States, and recognizing that he is not charged with any crime either in Britain or in the United States that pertains in any way to the WikiLeaks disclosures during the 2016 election, Michael Cohen, the discredited Trump attorney, has recycled a false claim that first surfaced during my trial in the Mueller witch hunt. Michael Cohen put this up on Twitter, saying that now that Assange is coming to the United States, that perhaps we can learn more about Cohen's claim that he overheard a conversation between me and candidate Donald Trump in 2016. The truth is that Mr. Cohen changed his story twice under oath about this alleged call, which never actually took place. First, he said it happened in July during the Democratic National Convention. Then he claimed later, after the prosecutors in my case laid out a timeline in the first day of trial that allegedly showed the time sequence of my alleged crimes, well, then Michael Cohen changed his story and said he overheard this conversation in August, just before the Republican National Convention. This conversation never took place. Robert Mueller, with his unlimited legal power and his unlimited budget, and with an army of over 600 prosecutors working for him, could never find either a phone record or any witness to bolster this false claim. Mr. Cohen made the exact same claim before the House Judiciary Committee under oath, which means he lied to Congress. But with Julian Assange coming to the United States and presumably testifying here, I have no concerns whatsoever about that testimony. That's because there was no evidence in my trial that I received anything from WikiLeaks and passed it on to the Trump campaign. And the claim that I knew about John Podesta's emails being phished and published by WikiLeaks in advance is categorically false, and there is no evidence to support it. It's a perfect example of one of those issues that reaches critical mass, I should say claims, that reaches critical mass on Twitter, but simply is not true. If you can check out my jacket today, I have waxed eloquent about the fact that we're in the summer months and it is so hot in Florida. Yes, you could literally fry an egg on the sidewalk. In addition to seersucker, which I've spoken about extensively here at the Stone Zone in terms of its coolness, well, this is madras. Madras is, of course, a fabric that was first found in India, brought to England by the English for its applicability and its suitability in extraordinarily hot climates. And this is a vintage Madras patchwork jacket. These are hard to find, but if you can find one, every gentleman should have one in his wardrobe for these steamy summer months. So my research online indicates to me that cannabis, that's right, marijuana, the active ingredient THC, could have played a role and had medicinal value in averting this COVID-19 pandemic as we knew it. Again, I am not a doctor and I make no medical claims, but I want to follow the science, and helping me do so is one of the most influential entrepreneurs in the legal cannabis and CBD space, Chip Paul. Chip Paul is the chief executive officer of gnupharma.com. That's GNUPHARAMA, as you will see in a moment. But he's one of the first people in the country who discovered that the endocannabinoid system of the human body was influenceable with natural products. Um, he was one of the first people to engineer herbal formulations based on this knowledge and effect. That image was for our previous segment. Okay. Um, Joining us now from Oklahoma City is the chairman of New Pharma, Chip Paul, to talk about this stunning revelation. Chip, welcome to the Stone Zone.
Oh, Roger, it is such an honor to be here. I'm just such an admirer of yours. I can't think of an American who's done more to defend the Republic than you have, sir. So it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be on your show. So you talked about the endocannabinoid system, and that's what we really study here in our company is the endocannabinoid system. Um, it certainly it's a major system in our body. So, again, what that means is that it has influence in major areas like our metabolic system, in our immune system, how we defend ourselves against disease. And so, cannabis is something that affects the endocannabinoid system. And by virtue of that knowledge and just kind of understanding how it affects the endocannabinoid system, you can certainly use it to boost your immune system to help with things like COVID. Now, again, like you, I have to be careful about what I say. We want to kind of steer clear of making too many medical claims as we discuss this, but I'll do my best to kind of not do that. Um, Cannabis is important, right? You had a company called Pfizer, who we're familiar with. Pfizer just paid almost $7 billion for a company called Arena Pharmaceuticals. And they didn't buy Arena Pharmaceuticals for their nice labs or their smart scientists. Pfizer has a lot of those. And they didn't buy them for their drugs that they had developed. They bought them for one drug that they had in particular. And that drug was an endocannabinoid affecting drug. So Pfizer is interested in getting into this market heavily.
So let's kind of start from the beginning. Was there an authoritative study that you know of that proved that cannabis could be useful in inhibiting the COVID-19 virus?
Yes. But that only occurred really last fall. Okay. And what had been studied is that certainly CBD, cannabidiol, helped if you had COVID, right? So if you had COVID, it would help boost, kind of help your immune system, help you fight it off. All right. But what has only just really come to light is the fact that that CBD and in particular CBDA and THCA, which are molecules literally in raw cannabis. So if you just went and picked cannabis leaves, these molecules would be in there. These molecules have direct action at your ACE2 neuroreceptor. So this isn't like a broad study saying, gee, cannabis or CBDs will help with that or THC will help with this. This is a direct study on the mechanism of action of kind of how COVID gets inside of you. And CBDA and THCA both block that neuroreceptor and alter it so that COVID cannot get inside of you. And that was a December of last year's study.
So you're telling me that Pfizer spent $6.7 billion to acquire a pharmaceutical company which did not have current approval for a treatment utilizing cannabis, which may have been valuable in the aversion or treatment of COVID 19. And then, of course, Pfizer has never pursued the legalization, the approval of that product. Why would that be?
Well, now they just bought a CBD drug that they can manufacture, and Dr. Bill can now, write that for you off label, potentially. Now, the thing that goes hand in hand with this is the behavior of the FDA recently.
Well, before we get into that, I do want to disclose to our listeners that cannabis, medicinal cannabis, is legal in Oklahoma, the state where Chip Paul is calling in from and where his principal business operates. CBD is also legal in the state of Oklahoma, and we have long known that CBD and THC can be usable in boosting the immune system. We are not doctors, we're not making medical claims. We're speaking to our beliefs, and we're not today promoting any particular product. But what we are doing is focusing on the actions of Pfizer because it appears, based on what I've read, that there was hopeful data, if not a legalized drug, there was hopeful data that the use of THC in connection with the endocannabinoid system could have promoted better health. Uh, I also need to point out that
Yep.
Chip Paul is a true pioneer in the effort to legalize cannabis for medicinal purposes in the state of Oklahoma. So here you have one of the most conservative states in the country, but where the voters have approved cannabis because, of course, the alternative is opioids. And we know the enormous damage opioids have done to the public health. So, just from a point of history, because I'm very proud to be your friend and I want people to know that which you have achieved, walk us through the process of legalization in Oklahoma and how the people came to approve uh, medicinal marijuana today in the Sumer state.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Roger. That's because I think it's a great story, not because of my role in it, but it's just a kind of a good story. It's a we the people story, and so I like to tell it. So thank you for asking it. So in 2014, my wife and one other individual, and actually it was five of us, sat around a room and said, just 2014, do we want to try to petition the state of Oklahoma for medical marijuana? And three of us raised our hands and we set about petitioning the state. We thought we would immediately raise a lot of money. We would get a lot of help. We'd have physicians come forward to help us, all kinds of things, which was folly. We had to do it all on our own. My wife and I, for the most part, paid for the first petitioning effort. We petitioned the state of Oklahoma. We were almost successful. And Oklahoma has a petition route. So if we don't like what the legislature is doing here in Oklahoma, we, the people, can petition. So we can go around and try to get enough signatures on a petition and put that on a ballot. So as a ballot question. So that's what we tried to do in 2014. We were not successful, but we were close. We changed the complete conversation in Oklahoma, and people began talking about medical marijuana. By 2016, we were able to petition the state again successfully. So we made the ballot. We thought we would make the Trump ballot in 2016, which was what we were going for. We were denied that ballot by EPA appointee Scott Pruitt. He had to argue a federalist argument over states' rights, which hurt him very badly, I'm sure, to keep us off the ballot. But we were denied the ballot. The Supreme Court had to look at our ballot title. So we had to defend our ballot title at the Supreme Court. We won that. The governor put us on the primary ballot in 2018. We were opposed by the governor, every sitting cabinet official, all the state, any kind of health organization, all the state medical organizations, all the state big, company health organizations, law enforcement, all the religious organizations, all our federal officials, so our US Congress and US Senate opposed us. And we still got 57% of the vote here in Oklahoma, which was an overwhelming we the people statement. 10% of our population now are medical patients, which is amazing. And again, that's 10% of our population, not, I don't know how many voting adults that is. It's a lot. We had to fight for this. The state tried to take this away from us right away. We had to sue them. We had to, a rollback by our Department of Health. We had our Department of Health issue probably the weakest regulatory that has ever been issued for marijuana. And we've somehow kept our industry, from running away with itself and not being a complete criminal enterprise. So it's been an interesting learning experience here in Oklahoma. And, I'm far from a politician, but I've had to be right in the middle of all these political battles. But it's been a God thing, honestly, and it's been a we the people thing. And it kind of, oh, if you want to go there, Oklahoma is a little bit early, let's say. And if you sort of consider that cannabis, and I do, cannabis is going to teach us so much about our health. You guys have no idea. I can't wait to teach you what I know, but other people are going to come along and teach you even more. But it's an important waypoint, let's say, in our spiritual, wake up. And a lot of people may not agree with that, but I know that you would, Roger. It just, you've seen the health benefits. I've seen them. I've seen, again, I'm not going to make health claims, but let's just say that a lot of almost miraculous things when you're in the pharma world are happening here in Oklahoma, happen every day, happen to people, I see every day. So, there you go.
Well, I myself am convinced that cannabis is a strong anti-cancer agent. I would be less than honest if I didn't tell you that my wife did use it in her all natural regimen against cancer, both a highly developed THC oil called Jack Simpson oil, which is not inexpensive, but very effective. First of all, it promotes rest because the system needs rest to charge its immunity, but it also is a powerful anti-cancer agent. She also benefited from a specifically tailored CBD oil. So I have seen the miracle, the healing power of Christ, but the Lord helps those who help themselves. And by going online and designing her own regimen, including fenbendazole, a FDA approved drug, which is approved for the use in animals, but like ivermectin, not approved for humans, but is very similar in its chemical makeup, along with massive infusions, intravenously of vitamin C, vitamin D, uh, sufficient enough doses of B17, Laetrile, but at levels at which I believe it was efficient. Today, she remains cancer free. So I would not be here talking about this today if I hadn't had some firsthand experience. I want to point out that when the question was on the ballot in Oklahoma, the opponents spent $1.6 million to defeat it. The proponents, led by Chip Paul and others that I have met, fine people, spent about $120,000. So perhaps Oklahoma is really not a conservative state. Maybe it's more of a libertarian state. In other words, a state where conservatives believe that each individual should make decisions for themselves. They shouldn't be conscripted to have a COVID 19 vaccination. They shouldn't be conscripted or or let me say, they should not choose opioids, which in my opinion are more destructive than they are helpful. And there has been some actions in Oklahoma recently regarding the FDA and perfectly legal CBD, which are deeply disturbing. We're going to come back to that in just a moment, and we'll be right back with Chip Paul. I want to speak a moment about our sponsor. This is Roger Stone. If you're just tuning in, this is the Stone Zone. Today we are focusing on whether there was evidence based on a massive acquisition by Pfizer of a pharmaceutical company that was experimenting and testing with cannabis as a potential inhibitor for the COVID-19 virus. And why, just as a question, why Pfizer spent $6.7 billion to acquire this company, yet has not pursued FDA approval of some of the drugs the company had developed. Chip Paul has joined me. He is a pioneer in the medicinal marijuana space. And I want to remind you that our programming today is brought to you by My Pillow. This is the kind of freewheeling open discussion you pretty much only find on frankspeech.com. And that's why I hope you did some of your most successful Father's Day shopping at mypillow.com. But if you thought mypillow.com was just about pillows or just about bedding, well, you're completely wrong. So, for example, with the promo code STONE at mypillow.com, I urge you to check out both the men and women's leisure wear and sleepwear. This is some of the most plush, comfortable stuff you can find. Deep discount now by using promo code STONE. I also recommend that you look at the yard signs. What? My Pillow has yard signs? Yes, unbelievable patriotic yard signs. Get 2020 right before we do 2024. I've been very candid about my enthusiasm for the current specials. The Giza Dream Sheets, the most elegant, supple, comfortable cotton you'll find anywhere. Buy one set of sheets, get one free, but only with promo code STONE. I've waxed eloquent about the bath towels. It was Mike Lindell himself who told me that some years ago, those in this industry began using a less expensive, less absorbent type of cotton that is treated with oils, which is why you can jump out of the shower and towel yourself off, but not absorb the water. Not so for the pillows at mypillow.com. Now, and I think we have a graphic on this, last week, shockingly, Walmart banned the MyPillow products from their stores. This is outrageous. This is part of the cancel culture. Here's how you can fight back and help this show and help this platform. Go to mypillow.com to fight the cancel culture. Whether it is the incredible bedroom slippers, which are available at a blowout sale. These are rubber bottoms, special technology, the most comfortable slippers you've ever owned. It's really not fair to call them a slipper because you could wear them on the street, you could wear them with jeans, you could wear them with khakis. They are available in both men's and women's styles and sizes. And these are normally $139, now $90. Where are you going to find a special like this? So you can help My Pillow, without whom this entire fabulous enterprise would not be possible. You can support Mike Lindell, who's a tireless patriot and spokesman for election integrity and free speech. You can support My Pillow, obviously supporting many fine conservatives here with our promo codes. And yes, you can support Mrs. Stone and I by using promo code STONE. So I ask you from the bottom of my heart, please go to My Pillow now and patronize our sponsor, mypillow.com. Some of you have written and emailed that you've looked for the show at 4 p.m. Central or 5 p.m. Eastern at Lindell TV, or probably at frankspeech.com, and you haven't been able to find it. First of all, let me strongly urge you to get the Frank Speech app. Go to frankspeech.com so you can download the app. That helps you get comfortably to Lindell TV 2, where this show is featured every day. I am very grateful for the extraordinary number of emails and text messages I get after almost every single show. So I thank you for joining us here. If you missed it, Friday night on the show with Brandon Howes, which is a terrific show, the flagship show here at frankspeech.com, we had a great discussion about the 50th anniversary of the Watergate break-in. And we made history because I laid out the truth we debunked the CNN special that you see upon your screen. And go to the show page for Brandon Howes and pull down that terrific interview. I think you will really, really enjoy it. Let's go back to our guest, Chip Paul, entrepreneur, a Renaissance man, if you will. And let's talk about the continuing efforts by the FDA. Now, you contacted me last week with shocking news because, as far as I understand, CBD oil is legal to possess in Oklahoma. It is legal to produce, but the FDA came knocking on your door. What was that about?
Well, if you it's interesting. You can, if you want to produce things in the United States that you're going to put in the human body, normally you do that as a dietary supplement and you go register with the FDA and you say, hey, FDA, I'm going to make dietary supplements, or you say, hey, I'm going to make food. So most of the CBD manufacturers in the United States, including our company called New Pharma, have registered with the FDA because we're trying to do things the right way. And so we're saying, yes, we're dietary supplement manufacturers, we use CBD. Well, that's been fine for a while, and that certainly looked to be fine. If you go back in history, you had some kind of important events. You had Farm Bill of 2018 happen, and that is where the U.S. Congress, passed omnibus bill, but part of it had to do with hemp. And what it said was that, marijuana, and again, it's all cannabis. So marijuana has more than a certain amount of THC, and let's call it hemp has less than a certain amount of THC, and hemp and marijuana are the legal terms. So it defined that line nationally, and it said, you can ship hemp around, you can grow it as long as it's, below this line of THC. So it kind of made, hemp nationally legal. Well, you had Coke and Pepsi all queued up. And again, I don't know if they were or not. I'm using them as an example. So sorry, Coke and Pepsi, but you're good examples. But you had major beverage companies lined up to begin to produce CBD water, right? And they were ready to go. And that Farm Bill 2018 happened, I think in October maybe of 2018. And almost immediately, you had FDA Commissioner Gottlieb, who's now on the Pfizer board, but he was then head of the FDA, come out and say, no, 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 no. You will not put drugs in the water or the food. So, to the FDA, it's analogous to putting, Xanax, right, in the water. So that was sort of what he came out in the position. Well, the industry freaked out, said, gosh, billions of dollars are kind of queued up and we're ready to go here, commercially. And so they had open hearings in, 2019, and I'm not sure what you probably know what the Trump administration might have done, but the anticipation was that the Trump administration would have had the FDA regulate the CBD business under the dietary supplements, probably, stipulation. So that was always the stipulation, that was always the thought. So that was where we all landed as manufacturers. Well, recently, the FDA has come out and they are issuing warning letters. Now, I'll kind of tell you the impact of what this means. It basically means shutting people down who are manufacturing CBDs under the dietary supplement regulations. Because what they're saying, and this is the first thing that they said to us when they walked in our door, is, are you manufacturing CBDs? Yes, we are. You are putting an unapproved drug in dietary supplements. And that is our viewpoint. And, I said, well, we're getting a warning letter. She goes, are you putting unapproved drugs in dietary supplements? I said, according to you. She said, well, you're going to get a warning letter. So, and that's kind of a not such a good thing, if you're a manufacturer. But what it does is it puts you in a position, it puts us in a position that puts every single CBD manufacturer who's now been inspected, because no one is not getting a letter. Okay, everyone will be getting the you're putting unapproved drugs, in dietary supplements letter from the FDA when they inspect them. So no one gets a pass on this. It's, just everyone's getting it. They are effectively shutting down the CBD business because the decision they put us in as manufacturers is, do you want to continue to put Xanax in the water, or, whatever, however you want to look at it. But that's the way that they would look at it. And no one will want to incur that liability. So, there are, thank goodness, states have, programs, and that, manufacturers, potentially could manufacture under state programs. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do yet, but, that's, if you go look at the FDA website and you go look at a letter that they issued in May, they're very pointedly putting the industry on notice that, you're done. And, if you want to keep doing it, but you're putting Xanax in water.
Very interesting. I do think that the Trump administration does not get the credit it deserves. It is through the efforts of Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, principally, and with the signature of President Donald Trump, that the hemp industry in the United States, illegal until that legal action, that federal action, was legalized. Today, well, you can walk into the vitamin shop or Walmart for that matter, and you can purchase CBD. So whether they're able to put this toothpaste back into the tube, well, that's something that remains to be seen. Recently, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to decriminalize the possession of marijuana. Just to be full disclosure, I have been, as a libertarian, an advocate for legalization of cannabis for almost 30 years. It's not a new position on my part. I believe it does have medicinal value. I saw the way it helped my father when he was dying of cancer, and therefore this is not a new position. People assume that because you're a constitutional conservative, that you don't have a libertarian streak or that you would be opposed to the legalization of cannabis. What we saw here in the state of Florida was very interesting. Uh, Cannabis, medicinal marijuana specifically, is legal in the state of Florida largely because of the enormous courage and the financial wherewithal of one man, John Morgan. John Morgan is a very famous personal injury lawyer. Uh, you must be living under a rock if you haven't seen the advertisements for Morgan and Morgan fighting for the people. But to his credit, John Morgan, who is a Democrat, uh, put his money where his mouth is. When the legislature in Florida refused to move any medicinal marijuana legislation, principally under Governor Rick Scott, who was inalterably opposed to same, uh, John Morgan put the question on the ballot in a constitutional amendment. In Florida, a constitutional amendment requires two-thirds of the vote to pass. And in his first go, John Morgan was unsuccessful. But it's important to note that he fell just short of the necessary two-thirds. It's also important to note that that was in a gubernatorial year, and because Morgan was a Democrat, there was some belief by Republicans that the question had been put on the ballot as a constitutional amendment to drive Democratic Party voter participation. I don't particularly believe that that was the case. To his credit, John Morgan came back 2 years later, perfected a number of flaws in his initial language, and thanks to a vote of the people, an overwhelming vote of the people, medicinal marijuana in the state of Florida was legalized. Then, of course, the Republican legislature tried to put a number of restrictions on it. Chip, you'll like this. They said you could ingest it, you could vape it, but you couldn't smoke it. Well, that is discriminatory against poor
They,
people. Not everybody can afford a fancy,
mhm.
expensive vaping apparatus, and as you know, the edibles are tend to be more expensive. To his credit, John Morgan went into court and beat those particular restrictions. Here's my real point, and I want you to comment on this. What we did find, however, in Florida were those very entities in agribusiness who opposed legalization of medicinal marijuana for decades in this state, because it is an issue that I started polling almost 25 years ago, and an issue whose time finally came when the voters passed it. They were the people first in line to control the farming of it. They were the first people in line to control the dispensary of it. There was actually a time under federal law that you could not get a license to legally grow cannabis unless you could demonstrate that you had held a state nursery license for at least 30 years. This is how the big boys control the industry. So, in the wake of legalization of medicinal marijuana there in Oklahoma, who has dominated and controlled the industry?
That is a great question, and this is I think that this speaks to kind of a problem that we have in medical marijuana. That I had the luxury of being able to scribe to pen the law that we have. I wrote the petition that ended up becoming our law. And in that petition, it was it was just after Ohio. I wrote it in 2015, a long time ago, but Ohio, I think, had just maybe gone legal, but certainly it's Illinois had just turned up. I think Florida was just on the cusp of the 59%, which you'll recall. But all of these states were setting up their licensing where it was a lottery, or it was some kind of selection process that led itself to a lot of let's say political manipulation. People could pay for a license a lot of money, and it excluded kind of the everyman. Well, again, and it wasn't just me. This was discussed with a lot of people. It was really a we the people thing here in Oklahoma. But we discussed that idea, and we discussed, well, how do we set this up where it doesn't unfairly advantage, rich people or people in agriculture, or, all of the other ways that these laws have been designed. Because we're designing this, so let's design it right. Let's do it the right way. And so what we did was we set the licensing limit very low for a commercial license, and we didn't put any restrictions on it. So any Oklahoman here in Oklahoma, and this was the way it was, our legislature is now in the process of eroding this, and so we're having to, as you know, repetition the state, Roger. But again, we had this set up very well, but our legislators kind of been in the process of eroding, these rights that we had won. But anyway, we set it up where any Oklahoman for $2,500, could get in the cannabis business. Now, what has happened as a result of that is our market is immense. It is, they say wild, wild west, and I don't mean it like it is kind of because it hasn't been enforced properly, a little bit out of control because it's so big. But it's $1 billion market here in Oklahoma, little old Oklahoma, right? But that's because we set it up free enterprise. We set it up free market. We have, 10% of our population are medical patients. That's amazing. So if you set it up right, again, it's the sort of good things happen. Now, real quick, because I want to get this in there, why is this so important? Well, marijuana is important because it affects something called our endocannabinoid system. Okay. And what is the endocannabinoid system? Well, let me just tell you what it does real quick. So, as you eat fats, dietary fats, and again, they're the fats you can stick on a triglyceride, as soon as they hit your intestinal lumen, they form endocannabinoids. Your main endocannabinoid you form from saturated fat, believe it or not. But when that happens, you set a nutritional state. So that sends feedback to your brain, your computer in your vehicle, so to speak, your hypothalamus hippocampus, and you set a nutritional state. And from that state of satisfaction or deficiency, you will be allowed, basically through your endocannabinoid system, to develop a microbiome. So it will manage kind of the bacteria inside of you within reason. Now, that's super important because if you look at disease and what's the cause of a lot of disease, well, it's pathogens, right? And this is research, anybody can look this up. Again, where do pathogens come from? Well, dysregulated bacteria. So when we talk about cannabis, we're talking about something that is almost like a master key into this endocannabinoid system that literally is our everything system. If we equated us to a vehicle, it would be the computer, the sensor array, and the mechanism of change inside of us. So that's pretty important. And cannabis kind of supplements into this, which is, why it works for cancer and things like that.
Uh, an excellent explanation, and one that I'm glad our listeners had a chance to listen to. Chip Paul, for those of you who don't know, was named by Cannabis Business Executive Magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in that industry. Due to his work in Oklahoma. Let me ask you a political question, if I may. The U.S. House of Representatives, as I said earlier, recently voted to decriminalize marijuana. You have a very substantial problem in that states have legalized what the federal law says is illegal. So the possession of marijuana technically is legal under Oklahoma state law, but continues to be illegal under federal law. This, of course, makes no sense. A step in the right direction was when the House, guided candidly by Democrats, voted finally to decriminalize marijuana. Now in the U.S. Senate, based on his past positioning, where do you think the senator running for reelection, James Lankford, who is facing opposition in next Tuesday's Republican primary, what's his history when it comes to cannabis, and how do you think he will vote on decriminalization?
That's a great question. I know that, in Lindell TV, we have lots of conservatives watching, and conservatives will be watching this. So, sadly, on this issue, and frankly, on many other issues, as Oklahomans, our sitting U.S. senators have not represented us well. James Langford, Senator Langford, is one senator who is running for reelection. And interestingly, one of his challengers here in Oklahoma, a guy named Jackson Lawmeyer, is a pro. He's not necessarily pro marijuana. He's not, flying a green flag by any means, but he has come out with a position on it, and he's come out with a federal position on it and where he would stand. And I think it's really important right now. We have all of these guys running for federal office. If marijuana is your issue, well, again, these guys should have coals and hot pokers on their feet to come to a position on this issue. It's super important that we hold their feet to the fire right now. So that is certainly happening here in Oklahoma. interestingly, it's hard to get a debate, here in Oklahoma with our Senate situation, as you know.
Well, the point you're making, I think, is a good one, which is Jackson Lawmeyer, Republican, conservative, America First candidate, a pastor who says he has never used marijuana, doesn't advocate its use, but nonetheless has said that he would vote for decriminalization, the bill passed by the House. Senator Langford is a lifelong opponent of what is today perfectly legal under Oklahoma state law. And that's the key point that I was seeking to make. Um, the, uh, the conversation here has been very, very valuable, and I appreciate your time. Again, joining us, if you're just tuned in, Chip Paul, one of the leading entrepreneurs in the legal cannabis, but more specifically, particularly in the CBD space, talking to us about the intricacies of the differences between state and federal law, and early research that showed that cannabis might have been useful in averting or at least treating COVID-19. Unfortunately, we'll never know by following the science because the company doing the most promising research was acquired for $6.7 billion by cannabis. Chip Paul, thank you so much for joining us here on the Stone Zone.
Thank you, Roger. It's a real honor, sir. So thank you very much.
And there you have it, Chip Paul. Uh, this is comes as a little bit of a surprise, but for those of you who have not read it, Dr. Simone Gold, the head of Frontline Doctors, I think one of the most courageous women I've ever met, someone who was a very articulate advocate as a physician for the use of both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, was arrested in connection with the January 6th riots. By her own admission, she did enter the building. Perhaps that was naive, but she didn't hurt anyone. She didn't destroy anything. She didn't assault anyone. But she has received a 60-day prison sentence for her involvement. Of course, this gives CNN the opportunity to smear her. They don't even say doctor, they say woman who spread COVID-19 disinformation sentenced to 60 days in prison in connection with the January 6th riots. Well, first of all, she's a learned physician, and they should address her as such. And secondarily, as for everyone who is tuned in, I would ask you to pray for Dr. Simone Gold. She is a good and courageous woman. She will obviously survive a 60-day penalty in prison, which I think is unduly harsh under the circumstances. Go to frontlinedoctors.com, AmericanFrontlineDoctors.com, a terrific organization that has done great work in the health freedom segment, as it were. So again, we're brought to you by mypillow.com and our other sponsor, Volta Wireless. If you are not concerned about the security of your text messages, the content of your emails, your internet searches, or your financial transactions, all of which you conduct from your cell phone, you should be concerned. Let's take a look at this message. This is Roger Stone. Are you concerned about the security of your email and text communications from your cell phone? If you're not, you should be. You see, in recent days, we have learned that the CDC is tracking millions of Americans through their telephones regarding vaccination status and location. Additionally, we've learned that the FBI is conducting millions of warrantless, illegal surveillances of average Americans utilizing their cell phones. The answer to this is Volta Wireless. Simply by downloading the Volta Wireless app, within minutes, not even network operators will be able to track your location, your identity, your communications, your internet activity, or your financial transactions. It's an extraordinarily triple encrypted system. So try Volta Wireless today by going to voltawireless.com. Unlimited coverage for as little as $19.98 a month will give you peace of mind that your communications are entirely secure. Please use promo code STONE when you go to voltawireless.com, and you can be safe and secure that your communications can't be monitored by the big brother. There you have it, folks. An important message from our other sponsor. That's voltawireless.com. Please use promo code STONE. For as little as $19.98, you can have peace of mind that all of your phone-based communications are triple encrypted and cannot be surveilled by the government or anyone else for that matter. And it is entirely compatible with your existing phone, although I strongly urge you to look at the phone sold at voltawireless.com. Again, please use promo code STONE. This is a product that we stand behind. My friend Alex Jones is using it. Mike Adams, the health ranger, is happy with it. Brandon Howes has just begun utilizing it. I think you will get peace of mind at an extraordinarily gentle price, a true technological miracle, in my opinion. This is Roger Stone. This has been the Stone Zone. I thank you for tuning in tonight. God bless you, Godspeed, and remember, victory or death.